Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be making my newest pattern, the Cambia top. So excited. So we're going to be making view B today, which is with the sleeves. Let me open that up. Here we go. Now, before we get started, I wanted to talk specifically about certain parts of the pattern so that you know these things before you cut into them. I've done a great job with my testers in getting this into the instructions for you as well, but you know, for those of us who kind of skim the instructions, let's go through it here. There are two pieces. There's this one and this one, where this one is for the sleeve ties and this one is for the sleeve loops. Now the loops go on the sleeve, and that is how we attach the sleeve to the bodice, and the sleeve ties attach to the bodice at these notch markings here. Now you can use this if you would like. However, if you want to save some time, or you would like thinner ties, these end up folding and then folding in again. And some of my testers found it to be a little too thick, and that's fine. It's all about preference. So if you want to save some time, or you want some thinner ties, or you don't want to just go through the whole cutting this 12 times and making 12 ties, you can use trim or ribbon. Go. This is from one of my leftovers from one of my versions. So there you go. This is a cotton. So you've got that. Or you can make your own bias, which also is in the instructions. So here's one that I made earlier, and you would just stitch across here, and you could use that. You could also do that with pre-made bias. So those are your options in terms of your ties. So you can use, once again to reiterate, you can use the pattern piece, ribbon or trim, or a pre-made bias. You can also do the same for the loops if you would like. All right, so now that we've spoken about that, next we are going to talk about the sleeve and cutting the sleeve. The sleeve needs to be cut 4 times. However, 2 times it is the main fabric, which is this entire piece that you see here. And then 2 with the lining on the dotted line. So what we're going to do is you're going to just fold that up. You can see it has a little cut for lining there, and that is what you will cut your lining with. Now I've got the notches here as well across the sleeve head. The double notch represents the back part of the sleeve. Now it's going to be important that you pay attention before you bind your sleeves, the sleeve heads, which I have written in the instructions, to make note of your back and either put a tag, or I like to put a little stitch line in there so I can tell the difference between the front and the back of my sleeve when I remove them from my top when I feel like it. So there's another important note for you. The last note we're going to talk about is the keyhole in the back piece. Now this is interfaced, and I would recommend, because these markings are pretty important for you, I would recommend interfacing to the wrong side of your fabric first and then transferring these markings. I find that works the best, but again, up to you. It's all about personal preference, but I thought I would bring your attention to that. All right, I'll come back once I finish cutting out my pattern. Okie dokie, I am back from cutting. Now the most important thing, which is step 1, is to mark all the markings, transfer them all across. Now I'm going to show you, let's start with the back keyhole first, because I wanted to show you how I mark that. Now I've already interfaced this. One of the things I actually like to do is interface the fabric that I'm going to cut the keyhole from, rather than cutting one interfacing and one main fabric. And that way, when I cut it out, it's already fused and it's all nice and neat. Okay, I'm gonna grab my Kids Ultra Clean Washable Crayola. These are my trusted marking tools. Okay, so this is how I mark. Oh, let's make some space so it's not confusing. This is how I mark my back keyhole, and you can see I've already done this before. So I literally just grab a pin, and I stick in some, I like to call them anchor points in there. And then I offset that a little bit just so I can mark them like so. Then I shift it back up, and then I just do 1, 2, 3. And you can see very faint, but they're in there. Then I grab my ruler and I just join them to the top and the bottom. Like that. And if you are a precise person, you can transfer this better than I do, but I actually just like to draw it in. There you go. That's how I transfer that marking across for that. So we'll set that to the side. The back bodice piece is pretty simple. It's just these notches here, and then you want to mark your center back right there, because that is where you will be placing this piece. So that middle line is going to match up with the center back. Okay. For the sleeves, you'll be marking the notches across the sleeve head. Make sure you mark that correctly. And then when you do it on the lining piece, this part is just folded up, like I showed you before, and same markings across the sleeve head. Now this one is the big one. This is the one that you want to make sure these are precisely marked. If not, your pleats are going to be slightly off. So you've got your notches here, and then you've got the pleat markings right there. I like to mark them like this. So I'll just do a little mark there, there, here. So you can see I'm putting those little marks, and then I will do the same to this side. So once I've marked them, I like to, just a little note here, I like to make the notches for the ties a little bit longer as opposed to the small markings I did for the pleats. So then what you're going to do is you're going to open this up, and you're going to find the wrong side of your fabric, which is a little bit hard with this one. So we're just going to go on this side. Okay. And then what I do is, so again, wrong side of your fabric. Then I just grab my giant ruler. This is why it helps to have a ginormous ruler. And then I just match up the markings on each side. Like that. And then I will just continue to do that, so that it will make my life a lot easier when it comes time to do the pleats. There you go, it's looking good. So I'll just repeat that. And once I've done that, we can get started on sewing our Cambia top. Okay, so now that we've gone ahead and marked all the relevant notches, yes, I know it's a lot of marking, but you will thank me later. I promise. There is nothing worse than realizing you haven't marked something correctly when you're sewing. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take the back bodice piece and the front bodice piece, and we're going to stay stitch the necklines so they don't stretch while we're sewing. I'll come back once I've done that. We've stay stitched those necklines and the back bodice piece at the armholes as well. I've gone ahead and done that. I don't know if you can see that there. And then if you here's a little note. So we're doing the pleated version, but I have included a bodice piece that doesn't have the pleats if you're in a bit of a rush. If you are using that one, then go ahead and stay stitch your front armholes as well at the same time. If you are not, we are going to do the pleats now first, and then you will stay stitch at the armholes to keep everything in place. All right, let's get started on the pleats. So now we're going to grab our front bodice piece, and we're going to have the wrong side facing up, and that would be the side that you marked the pleat markings on. Okay, so pleats, these pleats in particular are faux pleats. So there's a little bit of a different way to go about it. So if you've done pleats before, this is going to be a breeze for you. If you have not done pleats before, I also think this is going to be a breeze for you. Okay, so we're going to have the right side facing up where we've done our markings for our pleats, as you can see here. I don't know if that's picking up my light markings with my washable markers. And I like to think of the pleats in pairs, like the markings for the pleats. So you've got 2 up here, that's 1, 2, another, 2, and 2. This is also a really good way to sense check, like that you've gotten all your markings incorrectly. So if you are not seeing them in pairs, chances are you've missed one of the markings, okay? So what we're gonna do now is, since we're doing this from the wrong side, you're gonna be taking the lower line of the pairs and you're going to be moving them up. So let's try with the bottom first. You're going to grab that and you're going to move it up to meet the other marking, like so. Okay, then you're going to do that with the next one. Move it up like so. And you're going to go through and press these. Okay, so let's do that again, like that. Okay, and then you're going to notice that it's going to look like, oh, my pleats are upside down. Remember, this is the wrong side. So this is how it should be looking on the wrong side. Now let me go press these, pin it in place, and then I'll come back and I'll show you what it's going to look like on the right side. Okie dokie, we are back from the ironing board. Now once again, this is the wrong side facing up. Okay, so you can see that my markings, I've taken the bottom line, moved it up, and pressed it in place, and I've done that for all 4 of my pleats. So this is what it's going to look like on the wrong side. And what you're going to do is you're going to edge stitch right across there for each one, okay? And once I do that, you will then see on the right side, this is the right side, you can see your pleats. So you can see the pins shining through here, right? That's where you would be edge stitching, and so your pleats would be opening up like that on this side. So once I stitch that down, I'm going to also stay stitch across the armholes now, so you can see that these all fold nicely and give you that wonderful shape on your armhole. I'll be right back, and let's have a look at what that looks like once I've done it. Okay, back from the machine. Here is the wrong side facing up. Oh, sorry, my stay stitching there's a little gathered. There we go. Okay, so you can see it's all nice and flat on this side, right? And then I've stay stitched there. Now when I turn it to the right side, we have beautiful pleats. So there you go, you can see that. And that is what your right side will look like. And your pleats are done. That's it. Simple, simple. As long as you don't confuse your wrong and your right sides together, you're gonna have beautiful looking pleats. Now, for those of you who know how to do pleats, I am more than happy for you to do that. I'm just not gonna mention it in this video to not confuse anybody. All right, let's move on to the next step. All right, we're gonna set the front bodice aside for now. And we're gonna grab our back bodice piece. Now this is my right side of my back bodice piece. And now we're gonna grab the back facing that we had prepped earlier. Now first, before we go attaching this, you wanna finish the edge of your facing. You can do it, you can serge it, you can bind it. I personally like to bias bind it, so I'm gonna go do that and then come back. Okay, there you go. That's what my facing looks like when I bind it with bias. I like the finish. Could have done a little bit better there myself, but let's not judge my sewing. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the right side. So this is the right side. Oh my goodness, did I just, sorry camera. We're gonna take the right side and we're going to match it to the middle notch that we had marked earlier. And we're just gonna match that up there, and we're gonna stick a pin down the middle, like so. If you like to be a little bit more precise, I've made this so many times, so I'm kind of just doing it to the beat of my own drum here, but you can extend that marking down the middle so you know that you're setting this up straight. And then you're just gonna pin that in place like so, okay? So that middle marking is for you to pin, and that's where we're gonna later cut down the middle. But the outer circle here, or semicircle, semicircle here, straight lines there, that is your stitch line. So you're going to take this to the machine now and you're going to stitch all the way around like so. Hello from the machine. Okay, so I've hit this point here with the facing and I just wanted to talk you guys through it. I find doing this semi-circle curve, to do it like for it to lay flat, I like to reduce my stitch length. So right now you can see it's at the 2.5. So I'm going to go down to probably maybe a 1.5. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go really slowly around this curve. If you do that, there is a higher likelihood of you getting this to lay flat when you cut into it in the next step. So you can see now that I've reduced the stitch length there, and you can see how it didn't really deviate off the marking, which is really great. If you keep it kind of large, which you can see there, it's a lot harder to get a really good curve. So keep that in mind when you're doing your facing. Alrighty, back from the machine, and we can see how we've attached that facing in place. So we're gonna remove these pins now down the middle. We're gonna grab your scissors. Now, this is always a little nerve-wracking, but I promise you're gonna be okay. Before you cut in though, you want to make sure this is the right side of your fabric, this is the right side of your facing, and that they are stitched together, okay? Check that before you cut into it. Always good to sense check. All right, so now what you're gonna do is you're gonna cut through down through the middle, like so, and then you're gonna trim down the seam allowance without cutting into your stitch lines, please. Don't do that, like so. And then I like to clip in as close as I can to the stitches I did here, like so. Okay, and then what you're gonna do is you're gonna flip this to the wrong side. So let me just flip that in. Wow, I'm making this look super pretty. Okay, there we go. Oh, and you see it's not super flat for me there, so I'm going to go back. I'm going to just trim these off. Sometimes with the lighter weight fabrics you can get away with that, but not in this case. Okay, so I've trimmed that, and then push that to the right side, to the wrong side, sorry, and then you're gonna go give that a press, and then that's what your inside will look like. So once you've given that a press, you want to go back in and you want to edge stitch across here to just make sure the facing is down and won't be moving. Okay, I've pressed this now and I've edge stitched it in place, and you can see how pretty that is looking on the inside with my bias binding. It's looking super cute. Okay, let's move on to actually assembling. So we're gonna grab back our front bodice piece here, and we're gonna get the right side and the right side of the back piece, and we are going to match them up at the shoulders. So right here and at the side seams. Once you've pinned that all in place, you are now going to take that to the machine, and you're going to stitch with a 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance across the shoulders and down the sides, and then you're going to finish it in your chosen method. I will most likely serge mine, and then we can come back and see what's next. Back from the machine, and here you go. It's starting to take shape. You can see that I've stitched that down and finished the edges, and it's looking really good. Okay, so now the next part is going to be completing the neckline. Now there are two options in this pattern. There is a pattern piece called pattern piece G that I've included, and you can just cut that one out and use that for your neckline, and it includes the ties as well. So it's quite a long piece that you will create, and the instructions show you how to do that. Or alternatively, you can use pre-made bias or use the bias making tutorial that I've included in the instructions. I'm going to be doing that one, so let me go and make my bias, and then I'll come back and I'll show you how to do it. Okay, I am back from making my bias. I just followed the instructions that I've included in the pattern, and this is what my bias is looking like. So for the next step, we are going to grab back our bodice piece. And what we're going to do, I am doing option 1. So I'm not using pattern piece G, and that means I'm doing option 1, and I'm going to show you how we do that. So first, you're going to actually measure your bias against your neckline. So I'll do that. I'm just going to go real quick, fast and dirty here like this. Just going to keep going all the way around like that. Okay, so I know that's how much I'm going to need for my neckline. Within the neckline bias, we have ties, and I have done that at 17.5 inches or 44.5 centimeters. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to put a little mark here, because that's what I know how much I need for my neckline. And then I'm going to add the amount I want for my ties. Now, I've shown you this in the instructions so that you can decide the length that you would like. I personally like longer ties. I know some people like shorter ties, so that is up to you. It's completely customizable for you. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to measure how long I want my ties to be. I like to eyeball it a little bit here. So say I want to tie it up and I want it to be about there. So if I grab my ruler, it's about 16, and then I'm going to do, there's 2 ties, so we're going to add another 16. There we go. And that is going to be my ties. I'm going to cut that, and then we're going to attach it to the neckline. Okay, now that I've cut my bias to size, I am going to grab the ends, and I'm going to just actually cut that to be the same size. Hold on one second. These are not my proper scissors, so hopefully it'll give me a clean cut. There we go. Did you hate when your scissors go AWOL? Okay, so I'm going to put those ends together and then pull it like so, and that's going to give me my middle point. So we'll put a little mark there. Like so. Okay. Then we're going to take that middle part we've just marked, and we're going to take the right side of our bias. So I'm going to unfold it and take the right side of one side, and we're going to match it to the wrong side of the bodice. Okay, so right side bias, wrong side bodice. So now I'm just going to match that up. I'm going to pin that in place right here. Okay, and then I'm just going to continue pinning. Now I like to kind of stretch my bias just a little bit when I'm attaching it. I find it gives a better finish. So keep your bodice neckline as is, and you've stay stitched it, so it's not going to stretch, but kind of stretch the bias just a little to match it up. Then you're going to just pin that all the way around. And then you're going to see you've got that tie right there. Okay, so we're just going to leave that as is for now. We'll keep pinning on the other side. Okay, so now that we've pinned that in place, we are going to stitch 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch across this fold right here, this first fold. We're going to go all the way around and we're going to do that. Now, if you are someone who likes to put tags into their clothing, now would be the time. So I am going to quickly grab mine so I can show you. Grab my label right here. Here we are. And so I'm just going to like slip it in to the back wherever I like to usually have it there. And then pin that there to attach so I don't forget, like so. All right, so let's go around the stitch. Now what you're going to do, you're going to stitch only from the keyhole from here, so that part right there all the way around to the other side of the keyhole. Okay, I've stitched down the bias to the wrong side, and so you can see how that looks. Okay, so this is on the wrong side. You can see my little tag in there, all cute and sandwiched. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to flip this inside out. So we're going to put the right side out now. There we go, like so. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to bring this folded edge here of your bias over, and you're going to cover up the stitching line that we just did like that. Okay, and then we're going to pin that around like so. So we're encasing the raw edge, and you're going to see that the bias is visible on the outside. Okay, and then down here what we're going to do is, because we're going to edge stitch all this and we're going to do it all in one. So what you're going to do is you're going to grab your raw edge, you're going to push that in there. You can go give this a press. I highly recommend giving it a press at the iron. You're going to push that in, make sure all your raw edges are in there, like so. And then you're going to stitch like this from here, edge stitch all the way. Then you're going to continue that stitch at the neckline, all the way around, like that. And then you're going to do the same thing over here. Going to pop that in, that raw edge, fold it in like that. So your stitch can continue and you can close it off there, and then you will have your bias done. Okay, we're back from the machine, and you can see now our neckline is finished with our ties. So that looks really nice and neat. We just stitched all the way there, edge stitched it. Then once we hit here, we just made sure that we were encasing the raw edge and we were using that previous stitch line to cover up. You can see how good that looks. Amazing. Now we're going to do the next part, which is very similar to what we just did, but we're going to do it to the armholes. Now to do the armholes, we're going to grab our bodice and we're going to go to the wrong side again. So let's turn that inside out like so. There we go. We'll start on this side. Okay, and so we're on the wrong side. Now we're going to get our bias and we're going to get the right side of our bias. So unfold that, get the right side. We're going to pin it in place right here. And now we're going to go and pin all the way around. Okay, now that we've got we've pinned that all the way around, we're going to make a mark here to cut it down to size correctly. So I'm going to make a mark right there. Then we're going to overlap. I'm going to make a mark right there because that is where I'm going to stitch it. Then I'm going to grab my scissors and just cut away. So not on the little marking we just made, just a little bit away from that, like so. Set that to the side. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take those two markings and you're going to match them together with the right side of the facing, okay? So I know our marks are on the wrong side, but you want to match those up like that. Pin that in place like so. And you want to unfold all your bias, okay? Because you're going to be stitching that and cutting it to size. So we're going to go like that. There we go, perfect. And so where we marked, that's going to be where you stitch. Then you're going to cut away the excess, and then that is going to fit your armhole perfectly. Okay, back from the machine, you can see here, I stitched that together, trimmed off the excess. Now you want to press that flat like that and open like so. And then I'm going to pin to your armhole. There you go. Now that bias is cut to size for your armhole. And now you're going to do what we did with the neckline, and you're going to stitch here along that fold, which is 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch. And you're going to stitch all the way around. And then once you've done that, we'll come back and we'll flip the bias to the right side so we can get a beautiful finish like we did with the neckline. Okay, that's all stitched down. Ooh, a little bit messy there. It's wanting to already curve to the right side. So you can see that it's all stitched like that. And now what we're going to do, we're going to go to the right side. There we go. Right side again. Okay, and you can see there's our raw edge, there's our bias, and we want to just go over the existing stitch line we just did, which is right there. We want to cover it like so, and then we're just going to edge stitch that in place. Now before we go ahead and pin this all, this is the part where if you are doing view B and you're attaching the sleeve, or you want to do view A and just have some pretty bows, this also applies to you. We need to pay attention to these notches that we had marked. If not, we're going to lose them once we encase the raw edge, okay? So you want to grab your mark at this point. And you see where this notch is? You just want to go inside and just put a little mark there, okay? Same here. 2 notches there, so we know it's the back right there. So we're going to go inside right there, okay? Let me find this other one. This sneaky. He's been hidden from me. But you get the idea. Let me find those and come back. Okay, so now that I've found them all and I transferred the markings to the inside, now we can go ahead and encase that raw edge, and we will not lose our notch marks. Okay, got that all pinned now. Now my fabric is a very lightweight cotton, so I can get away with actually not clipping in. However, I do recommend clipping in, usually. But I just wanted to make a note of that even sometimes I don't follow my own instructions. Okay, so now we're gonna go edge stitch that in place. And once that's done, that armhole will be completed. And then you're gonna repeat the same process to the other side. Okay, back from the machine after doing the second armhole, and you can see it's looking super cute. And I made sure to transfer the notch markings to the inside since we're doing view B, and we need to put the ties there later on. Okay, so now we can put this to the side and we're gonna get started on the sleeves. Okay, now we're ready to make the sleeves. Now this up here is my main fabric, and I've cut 2 out of that with the whole pattern piece. And then for the lining, I folded up that dotted line like I mentioned at the beginning, and I cut out my lining pieces like so. And you want to make sure you've transferred all your notches across on all 4 pieces that we've cut out. Let's put that to the side now. Okay, and now I'm going to grab one of my lining pieces and one of my main fabric pieces. And what you're going to do is you're going to have your right side facing up of your main fabric, and then you're going to get the right side of your lining piece. Now, if you can't tell the difference, like you can see mine here, I like to pay attention to the notches. So you can see if I placed it like this, you would see the notches differ here. That's a front notch, that's a back notch. So I'm going to turn it around. And that is the way it is to be matched up. So you can see now the correct notches are aligning here. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to pin the bottom hem here, which I probably should press this before I go sewing that. Don't know why it wants to curl up. And I'm going to pin across the bottom here, and then I'm going to sew with a 1 inch or 2.5 centimeter seam allowance across here. So let me grab my ruler. That is just to show you. So let's line this up. It will be this far away from the edge, so this is where you are sewing. Now, if you are not confident with sewing that on your machine just freehand, you can always just mark that across here and just follow the line that you marked. All right, I'll come back once I've done that. Okay, we're back from the machine, and you can see that I've sewn that 1 inch, 2.5 centimeter seam allowance. Now what you're going to do is you're going to open like that, and you're going to put your lining away from your main sleeve piece. You're going to press that. So pretend like I'm pressing it right now. And then what we're going to do, and this is why you need to press, see how like that's curving up there? Just wanted to show you that never skip pressing. Okay, so then once you do that, then we are going to create the elastic channel. Now to do that, you need to stitch 5/8 of an inch or 1.5 centimeters away from this stitch we just did. So this line right here, see that? You're going to do 5/8 or 1.5 centimeters away from this towards the lining. So not up here, you're going to be catching what we've pressed back here, okay? And so let me get my little thingy here, find that. Okay, that's how far it is, and that's going to be right here on this side. You're going to stitch all the way across, and that will create your channel. This will become the channel right here. Okay, let me do that. I'll come back and then I'll show you how we thread through the elastic. Okay, we are back from the machine, and you can see here that I have created my channel right there. Let me like get that up for you to see. There you go, there's my channel. Okay, so now the next part is to cut your elastic to size. Now I have included a tutorial on how to pick sizing for you. So like there's a recommendations table, but the way that I like to do it is I like to actually, because I'm neurodivergent, I don't like things being really tight on me. So what I like to do is I like to thread this on me where it's going to hit. Sorry, it's a little higher up. Excuse the tattoos. Okay, so I'm going to take it like that. And what I do is I like to make sure it's firm. So I'm not actually stretching the elastic. I just want it to be pretty firm on me. So like that. See what I'm saying right there? And then once it washes, like through the first wash, it tightens up a little bit because I don't pre-wash my elastic. So that's how I choose my size. And then I'll just take that and I'll cut it like so. And then while I'm here, I like to cut it from my other sleeve as well. If not, there's nothing worse than forgetting and then you've got to measure yourself again. So there we go. There's my elastic. Let me put this one away. There we go. Okay. So now we only need one of these right now. And what I do is I grab my marking tool, and I like to just put little marks on each side so that I know that I haven't twisted it when I've put it through the channel. Okay. And then all you're going to do is you can either put a safety pin here, or if you have like an elastic threader, you're going to do that, and you're going to start on one side and thread it through here, and then you're going to stitch here. So pretend this is inside the actual channel. You're going to stitch here to hold that in place, and then obviously that stretches all the way over here. And once you feed it through the other end, making sure that your marking is still facing up so you know you haven't twisted your elastic, and then you're going to sew right here as well to keep it in place. I like to sew it within the 1 centimeter seam allowance, so that way when we go to create the whole sleeve, that stitch is not going to be visible. Okay, let me do that now. Okay, this is what it's looking like. Super cute. And then you can see I've stitched there and there to hold that elastic in place. I like to give it a little stretch like that so it kind of distributes it evenly. And now we're going to do the next step where we are going to put right sides. So right now we have the right side facing up. We're going to put the right sides together like so. And then we're going to just pin along this edge. There we go. And then we're going to stitch this down here with a 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then you're going to press that open. So there's no need to finish this edge because it's going to be hidden inside. So let's go do that, and I'll come back and we can show you how the magic unfolds for this sleeve. Okay, we are back from the machine, and you can see here that I stitched down that and then I pressed this open. You don't have to press it if you don't want to. I like to. I think it gives a better finish. So now the next part, this is where the magic occurs. This is why you do not need to finish this seam. You're going to grab the lining and you're going to pull it up towards the sleeve head, and you are going to match the wrong sides together. So wrong side, okay? And then what you're going to do is you're going to bring it all the way up like that. And oh, these are my wrong pins. 1 second. Okay, correct pins. Here we go. All right. And then you're just going to pin like that, and you're going to follow, just matching up those notches there. Like that. Here we go. See those 2 notches? Yay. Matching up. We love when the notches match up. Okay, next one. Like that. So you can do this all across the sleeve head here. Like so. I know, watching me pin is just so entertaining, guys. Okay. Like that. And then lucky last one. Oh my goodness. I swear, I love this lining fabric, but it is so thin that it likes to just stick to everything. Anyway, okay, there we go. We've pinned it all across, and you can see here our bubble hem is starting to take shape. Isn't that cute? Okay, so then once you've done that, you're going to baste your lining to your main fabric. So just all around here, you're going to baste. And that way, your lining and your main fabric are going to become like one, and it's going to make it so much easier when we add the loops in and we bind it. Okay, so let me go do that and I'll come right back. Look at that sleeve, it's all basted now. And we've got like just this one cute little sleeve. How fun. Okay, so now we're going to set that to the side and we're going to grab our sleeve loops. Now, oh my goodness, I really need to stop knocking the camera up. So sorry, guys. This booty likes to totally knock the camera all the time. Okay, so we're only going to grab one of these. So we cut 2 out because one will make enough for one sleeve and the other one will make enough for the other sleeve, and it makes 6 in total, like for each one, so 12 across the board. Hopefully that made sense. My goodness, sometimes I just talk too much. Okay, let's put that to the side. Now, for the sleeve loops, this is how it works. You are going to press at the machine in half, okay? So you're gonna press that, right? And then, let me just do this because I cannot film myself at my ironing board. Okay, so you can see that it makes like a little fold in there, okay? Then you're gonna use that fold as a reference point to bring in the raw edge on one side, raw edge on the other side, and then you're going to press that, okay? And then you can see it gives you like that really nice clean finish. And you're going to do that all the way down, and then you're going to edge stitch it in place right here, and that will take us to the part where we're going to cut them to size. So I'll come right back once I've done that. Back from the ironing board, and you can see what I've done here. So you can see how beautifully pressed that is. I have not edge stitched it yet because I wanted to show you what that looks like. So you can see that I've folded in the raw edges, closed it up. Now you do not need to worry about folding in the raw edges on the short ends because we're going to cut this to size, and then they are going to be hidden in the bias, these raw edges, okay? So now we're going to go to the machine, edge stitch this in place, and then we will get 6 for the one sleeve out of this one piece. Alrighty, look how pretty this is looking. Okay, so there you go, you can see it's edge stitched in place. And now what you're going to do is you're going to measure out 6 pieces at 3 inches each, which is about 7.6 centimeters. Okay, so I'm gonna grab my ruler here, that's 3 inches. So we're just gonna cut those to size. We're just gonna go 1. So once you cut 1, you can get that ruler away, and you'd like to use that one as a reference point. So we'll do 2. Let's check that. Perfect. All right, we have 6. There we go. Now what we're going to do now is we're going to grab back our sleeve. Here it is. And you're going to grab each one of these and we're going to place them on the notches. And what you do is you simply take this, fold it in half like that. So you can see how that looks. Then you're going to line it up on a notch and pin that in place. Like so. Okay? So you're going to repeat that. Now I did mention, this is why you didn't have to worry too much about the raw edges because they will be encased in the bias in the next step. So don't stress about that. Now I'm going to quickly show you what I do with the back notches because there are 2 of them. So you're probably like, where do I put this? I like to put it right in the middle of the notches like that. Okay. There you go. Only 2 more left. Another thing I like to do, but that's just because I'm pedantic, so you can see where I've edge stitched it, right? I like to have the edge stitching facing towards the seam this way. So it's not facing up towards the sleeve head, it's facing downwards. I don't know why I do that. I just like it. I think it just makes it more professional looking. But there's a little note for you on what I like to do in terms of finishes. Okay, lucky last one. Here we go. Okay, and then once all these are pinned in place, you are then going to baste these in place so they do not move when we bind it with the bias in the next step. Okay, gone ahead and basted that now to the sleeve head, and you can see everything is in place and not moving, which is fantastic. Now we are going to bind the sleeve head. So we're going to take the bias that I had made earlier, and we are going to apply it the same way we did for the neckline and for the sleeve, the armhole on the bodice piece. So we're going to match the right side of the bias to the wrong side of the sleeve head. And we're going to pin that in place all the way around. Okay, now that we've pinned that all the way around, we are going to mark where it overlaps. So I'm going to take this part here, put a little mark like that. Then it overlaps here, like so. Then I'm going to cut away excess, not at the mark, a little bit past that point, okay? Like so. Put that to the side. Okay, and then we're going to unpin that, and we're going to match those two markings. So you can see that mark's there and that mark's there. We're going to match that up. Oh, here's a pin. Like that, and you want to fully unfold the bias for this part like that. Like that. There we go. And then you're going to stitch down that point and trim off the excess, and then your bias will be the same size as your sleeve head. I'll come back once I've done that. This is what it looks like. Stitch down, and then I'm just gonna press this open with my hands. You can obviously press this with your iron to be more professional, but just for this video, I'm gonna do it like that. Okay, and then what you're going to do is you're just gonna stitch with 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, which for me is the equivalent of my fold right here, the first fold. So I'm gonna stitch all the way around. This is what it looks like stitched all the way around the sleeve head. And then you can see here your sleeve loops are well and truly encased in there. So when we turn it over now, so we're going to flip this to the right side to finish it off, you are going to take that fold right here on your bias, and you're going to pull it over, and that is going to cover the stitch we just did. Okay, and you're going to pin that in place all the way around. So let me just pin it here to show you like that, and you're going to continue to pin all the way around, and then you can see beautifully encases that raw edge and the raw edges of the sleeve loops. So you're going to edge stitch that all the way around, and then once you've done that, you're going to, now this is optional. I like to do this because I think it sits better when I tie up my sleeves to my bodice, but I like to pull this up. That's a loose thread, 1 second. Don't judge me, my thread and snips are not nearby. Okay, I like to pull this upwards like that, and then I like to do a little stitch here so that they stay out like that. But if you want it to remain hidden, you don't have to do that, but I will make a note that when you tie it up and it is just loose like this, you run the risk of like your seams kind of moving around when you're wearing it. Okay, all right, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to edge stitch this down, and then I'm going to stitch my sleeve loops facing upwards, and I'll come back once I've done that. Okay, sleeve number 1 is done. Look at that, that is pretty. So that's your outside, and you can see your bubble hem like that. And then this is what I was talking about with pushing the sleeve loops up towards the sleeve heads. And I just did one stitch here, but if you want to be have it extra secure, you can do a second stitch as well. But that's what mine looks like. So you're going to repeat all of that we just did for this one sleeve and do the other sleeve. And once you've done that, this is where all the magic comes together. So let me grab my bodice. Okay. So this is ready to be attached to the bodice, but now we need to create the ties that go in where we've marked the notches inside that armhole. And once we have that done, then you can tie it together. Yay! So I'm gonna go finish the other sleeve first, and then I will come back and we will start creating our ties. Now the beauty of this top is if you do not have enough fabric for your ties, you can use ribbon or trim, like I mentioned before in the intro to this video. Now I haven't done the calculation yet, but I think I might just be short on my fabric for my ties, but I've cut out one so that I can at least talk you through how to create the ties. Okay, so let's put that to the side. I've cut out one. If you have enough fabric, you would be cutting out 12 of these, okay? And if you have like a little square or something still of your fabric, you can use my method for the creating bias to create the ties as well. It's great if you're running low on fabric, which I still think I may not have enough, but we shall see. So what we're going to do is, with right sides together, you're going to fold this in half. And you can press it if you would like, but I just fold it in half, okay? And then what you're going to do is you're going to stitch down here with a 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now when I do this, because they're ties and you're going to be using a loop turner, I like to increase my stitch length just a little bit because it helps with pulling it inside out. So I'm probably going to do a 3 or 3.5 stitch length. Okay, so what you're going to do is you just pin across here or take it to your machine and press it. Okay, not machine, your iron. My goodness. Is it Friday yet, everybody? Okay, and that's how it's going to look, and you're going to stitch it down here. Okay, I'm going to do that, come back, and then we will create the tie. Okay, so you can see that I have stitched. There you go, that's a better view, like that. And what you're going to do is you're going to trim it down like so. So it's easier when you're turning it inside out, okay? So we'll just do that. Okay, so once you trim that, you're gonna find the side that you stitched, which is this side right here where I stitched across the short edge. And you can either use one of these, which is a loop turner, or I'm going to check if this one is thin enough to go through here, and I believe it is. So you could use a quick turn as well. Okay, so I don't know about you, I don't love using loop turners. I have to be really in the mood to use that. So I'm going to try and use this one. And so what you do is you put it through here. Like that. Okay. Then you grab the inside part and you find that point to start turning it inside out. Okay. And I can feel that's happening now. So now I'm just going to keep gently doing this because you do not want to put a hole through this. I have done that many times and it's not been fun. So I actually tend to remove this after a little while from the inside because it's not really doing a whole lot because I'm gently doing this. I'm just going to keep going like that. Oh, And there we go. Okay, and then you can use this to make sure like all your edges are through like that. There we go. So then you're gonna take it out. There we go. And there you go, there's a tie. And then the last part is you're going to, I like to use this again. You want to just pop that raw edge inside, like so. There you go. And then you just stitch down that edge, and then you've created your first tie. I'm going to set all this to the side now because I got to figure out my tie situation, see if I can make 11 more. But for the purpose of this instruction video, I'm going to show you what you do with your tie. So pretend I have 12 of these already made now. So what you're going to do, you're going to match up your short edges like that and put it in half, okay? And that's your half point. Then you're just going to go here into your bodice, match it up to a notch, and pin that in place. Much like we did with the sleeve loops on the sleeve. Like this, oh my goodness. I'm having a very difficult time with this right now. I don't know why. There we go. There you are. So that's how it looks on top of a notch. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to stitch that in place there. For the ties, I do like to do 2 stitch lines. So I do one right here on the edge and one right here. You can also turn around, do it from the right side if you prefer, so you can see how those stitches are going to look. But essentially, you're not going to be seeing these stitch lines very much once you tie up your ties. Okay, so then you will just repeat that across the armholes. And then on this side as well. And then once you've done that, you can attach your sleeve to your bodice. How exciting! So I will report back and see if I have enough fabric. Okay guys, we are approaching the fun part where we put all this together, but I wanted to show you a couple of things first. So I indeed ran out of fabric for my ties, so I went to my local store and I got myself some cotton twill. So you can see here, they're laid out cut like this because I wanted to talk about if you do opt to use a ribbon or a trim or anything like that, just make sure that you're taking care of your raw edges here. So for my cotton ones, I actually like to use a fabric glue. Let me see where it is. Here it is. I don't know what direction to put that in. This Fabric Fusion, and it dries clear. So I put this on my organic cotton ones, and then the beauty of using a polyester or a synthetic is you can just burn it with a lighter. So there's that option as well, but I wanted to show you. The other thing I wanted to show you is the markings of when, so now that I've got both sleeves, so this is where we want to avoid the confusion, which is why it's written in the instructions to put a little mark on the back of your sleeves. So I'll show you what mine looks like. It's just that. It's a little line through that notch with the double notch, and I've got it on this side as well, right here. So it's really tiny. You could also opt to put in, when you're doing your bias, a little tag there, but now I will forever know which sleeve goes on which side, right? Okay, so last note, lots of notes in this little bit of the video. I like to hem before I tie everything together. I know in the instructions I have you putting it together, but if you want to have less bulk when you're ironing your hem, I recommend doing so. Which brings us to the last sewing part, which is sewing your hem. Now, in the instructions, I have you folding it up 3/8 of an inch and then 3/8 of an inch again, like that. But there is this slight curve here, okay? And if you don't feel comfortable with doing a slight curve, I find this helps the best when I'm doing a hem. And that is, I folded up the total amount. So 3/8, 3/8, let me get that on my ruler here, okay? And then what I do is I'll bring it up like that, Okay, and I'll press this, and then when I take it to the machine, since this would be pressed right there, I just tuck it in like that and I sew it, and I find that it does really well with my curves. So there's another tip for you. Okay, I'm gonna go do the hem and then put these ties in, and once we do that, we can put it together. Okay, look at this. It's looking so good. So here is my hem all finished with a nice press. There you go. And then my sleeve ties are in. And so you can see here, I just do 2 stitches across the bottom and the top to secure them in place. Now the beauty of this top is if you don't want to wear the sleeves, you can just tie it like this at your arms and have like a cute sleeveless bow detailing. But since we're making view B, I'm going to show you how I put my sleeves in. So I know you're probably like, I know how to tie bows, I know how to do this. I've made this so many times. This is my foolproof way. So when I start at the front, I'm going to make sure this is the right thing first. It's facing the right direction. Where is my back? That's the back notch. Okie dokie. Back notch back there. Okay. I like to pick the inner one. So you see how there's like an outer version and an inner version. So I pick the inner version and I will slide that in. Oh, if I can. There we go. Like that. See that? And then I will do the same. Grab the inner version and I will slide that in like that. And inner version again. Slide that in. There we go. And then I simply tie a bow. Everybody has their own way of tying bows. So whatever way you think it looks the cutest. So there's one. Let's do the next one. Like that. Just showing you the different ways you can tie bows, everybody. So you can see this one. I find tying it that way is not as cute as this, so you can see how that kind of overlays like that. So I'm gonna switch back to bunny ears, everybody. Bunny ears. Like that. Very nice. Oh, this is looking cute. That's the beauty of this pattern. Like you really can do a lot with it. Like you can do contrasting trim. You can do different ties. Okay, there you go. Now I'm gonna flip this around. I'm gonna show you how I tie the back. So once again, you can see that there's like an inner version, outer version. Inner, out, okay? So I'm gonna get the inner version again and slide that in. I just find that it makes the sleeve sit like the best if I'm folding it in that way. So, and honestly, you wouldn't struggle this much if you weren't like me and actually wait for your glue to dry. Yes, my glue is still tacky, my fabric glue, as I'm putting it in. Okay, like that. Super cute. How many bows are too many bows? That is the question. Okay. So now that we've done this side, you're just going to repeat and do the exact same thing to the other side. And then your top is done.